But basically, throughout this weekend, we've sort of been pitching this kind of like aspirational thought project idea to a few people, and found out that a number of people in the room had a very similar idea. So we just sort of started hacking on it a little bit, and we'll see where it goes. But basically, the concept is sort of I guess it's a incubator for projects and ventures in what maybe we'll call like the new economy. We don't necessarily have a great title for sort of like the theme or the focus of these projects and ventures, but I would say maybe the best I could do would be like durable shared value. So things that projects that basically are kind of undervalued in the current market, but in the long term actually will accrue a lot of value and provide like a lot of good to society at large and the people involved. And so the basic idea or problem we're trying to solve is that that type of development is undervalued in the market. And so you don't see the type of sort of support for early stage projects and ventures that you see in more profitable markets like tech. There's a huge ecosystem of support for like young tech startups that help them with business development and sort of like honing into sort of a very clear idea and all that kind of stuff. And so we're not sure exactly what I guess the goal, first of all, is to develop pretty much like a co-living, co-working space, and then like a support community that would grow out of that program or space in the long term, like sort of a more traditional tech incubator, but for these types of, I guess, sustainable development, new economy, whatever you call it, projects. And we were thinking that maybe sort of a first step would be to provide, so basically what we're trying to provide, I'd say, I hope this is right, I think we distilled it down to kind of like time, space, and project support. And then because people often who are interested in this stuff end up not pursuing their projects and ventures or hitting too many barriers to entry because they have side jobs, they don't have the time, they don't have a place to work. Our thought was that if we located this space in a rural area where the barriers to land are a little bit lower, land and space I guess really is the resource, we might be able to control costs enough to make it more accessible and sort of start from there. So we'll see where it goes. And we have, there's a lot of question marks about sort of like what the financial model would be, how would we support this work. But if we can sort of find ways to share resources as people who want to develop projects and enterprises in a space that isn't incentivized economically in the short term, how do we leverage our collective knowledge, collective resources, and how do we share kind of the infrastructure that allows you to attain that kind of development when the market currently doesn't really value it. I guess that's it. I'm done rambling.
And also, on a side note, there's like a little, well, part of this part of this conversation was also like the relationship of the city to the country, and through the Greenhorns and FarmHack, we may have access to a potential studio space that would be based in Hudson, and then from there, also Severn is given like an open invitation to anyone who wants to be collaborating in Essex, and they have a good FarmHack base there. So just to continue that conversation between the city and the rural, because there is space and resources there. There's some space and a lot of resources here, and maybe there can just be more of an open relationship and conversation. And one way that we've been talking about that is having more regular FarmHack meetings that are like shorter, like maybe 3 hours. 2 presentations on a more focused topic, and then like a half hour each, and then specific goals wanted by those people who are presenting, that then motivated people who are intrigued by those topics can then focus in and get into like an interdisciplinary group. And not everyone would have to come to every meeting. It could be completely based on what you're actually interested in. But if it was, oh yeah, go. Do it.
And we can, if we were to do something like that, we can sort of tap into the wider community of sort of people in New York that are interested in participating in these kinds of projects who maybe didn't make it this weekend, but we have the beginnings of a list of kind of organizations and networks in the city whose constituents, some of them we think would be interested in participating in this kind of thing. So there's sort of like public good-minded developers for tech stuff. There's permaculturists who are definitely not profit motivated and are happy to, a lot of them, and are happy to help out with these kinds of projects if they have skills and insight they can learn. And then just really quickly, I'd say kind of like one of the benefits theoretically of this type of support network would be that if you were to really get buy-in from a lot of people and develop a supportive community that's working together towards these types of development projects and enterprises, it would also allow sort of that community as a movement to sort of like brand itself and leverage its sort of like collective outreach to help with things like funding and marketing and sort of like all the like nitty-gritty logistics of business development that often individuals trying to develop these kinds of projects alone struggle with, because you have to be an expert in a million different things if there's no support services for those sort of intangible, they're not intangible, those like logistical challenges of developing something. Well, I guess, yeah, are there any renewing questions? Is that not part of this? Do you guys have questions?
I think it's a conversation we all have been having for this entire weekend, and I think we'll just have to see where it goes from here. I mean, really, like, the farm hack that was developed by Severn and all her collaborators at the beginning is looking at this open source and open idea share, and that's, you know, like, that's one thing. And then there's, I don't know, there's a lot of different iterations. But if we all want to continue this conversation, and then, you know, no obligation type group, but when people are motivated, they can come to a meeting and collaborate on a specific project. Because really, it's like money is the constraint, and so when people have the time to share or resource to share, that's when you should come and contribute. And I think all of us need to make sure we don't burn out, and that we really put our energy where it's needed and where we feel like we can continue to spiral in the right direction.